tell me if you've heard this one before.
Yeah.
As a Scrum Master. Hey, what do you do all day after the first 15, 20, 30 minutes of your day?
Stand up.
When you're done running stand up. And if there's not a sprint planning that day, you don't do anything for the rest of the day, right? What do you do all day?
There's misunderstandings out there, right? So people don't know what a Scrum Master does. That's a relatively new role for a lot of people, especially older organizations, quote unquote traditional. They don't know what a Scrum Master does. What's visible to them, right, is a Scrum Master, well, they do the daily stand-up. Sure, once in a while they do the, some of the sprint events. So other than that, what do they do? And so from their point of view, maybe it's a fair question to ask, right? Because they don't know.
I figured the structure of this episode, since you're here and we actually have a Scrum Master, like actual practicing Scrum Master.
What do you do? I thought you're a Scrum Master.
That's a different episode.
We're like 80 episodes in. We still don't know what Ohm does 80 episodes in.
I know you're a product guy.
Yeah, right. That's my professional title, product guy.
We should have a
product guy, because I don't know if it's a product owner or a product manager.
Doesn't matter.
Or just a director of products.
I'll just keep cashing the checks.
Check casher.
Yeah. So what I figured we'd do for the broadest audience possible is we'll dial back the Scrum Master to the facts, like what is published in the Scrum Guide, and we'll start from there, because I figure we can use a Scrum Guide as a guide for this conversation, walk through it, and we can try to connect it to experience. We'll try to talk about organizations without Scrum Masters. So the 2020 Scrum Guide defines the Scrum Master as serving 3 different audiences. They serve the Scrum team, they serve the product owner, which I'm going to interpret as they serve product, because the product owner is very, very specific. They serve product, and they also serve the organization. So when you're like, what do you do all day? Well, you have 3 different stakeholders that you serve. I don't know if stakeholders is the right
Actually
term.
that is the right word.
Interest groups.
That is actually stakeholders is the right word, because remember they're serving the product owner. I know you want to call it a product, but they're working with a particular person. Remember, you can only have one product owner in a team.
I think generally Scrum Masters are working with a product owner on a day-to-day. Sometimes they're working with a product manager, going into these meetings where they're defining product or talking about product things. So loosely, maybe, but we can just call it product owner or product. That's fine.
So do you want to start with product, or do you want to start with the Scrum team?
Start with this team, because I think people relate.
Start with the beginning, just like I said there. Start with
All right, so the Scrum Master serves the Scrum team in several ways, including bullet point 1, coaching the team members in self-management and cross-functionality. Now, in the terms of what do you do all day, like, can you give me an example of what this looks like in terms of I need to make time to coach the team members in self-management and cross-functionality?
So everybody needs to be able to work together, where we're saying, okay, I always use this example, and it's kind of funny, but it's real. Like, if you win the lottery today and decides, like, screw it, I'm out, then everybody else needs to know what you're doing, and someone needs to be able to take over that responsibility.
You need me to take me to your boat. That's where you need me to be taken to.
Especially if you win the lottery.
Right.
Yeah, because someone can win the lottery too. Actually, I've had a team member that decided, hey, I'm going to school in Canada. He's in India, and he decided, I don't know if he won probably the Visa Lotto or something, and he was like, I'm out. Nice. So now the other members of the team have to know exactly what he was doing and be able to take it, because we had a bunch of spike stories that he was working on. So someone needs to be able to say, okay, you've done the spike story. I need to be able to know exactly what you're doing. So you have that cross-functionality where I know what exactly is happening in the product. I can jump on and test. I can jump on and develop. I can jump on and do whatever it is. So the Scrum Master needs to be able to make sure that everybody's working together as one unit. So there shouldn't be, oh, this guy falls sick today, and we gotta wait 4 or 5 days where he gets better before we can finish this story. If the sprint is at the end of the sprint, I need to be able to say, oh, this guy's sick. Can you go ahead and finish that story? And that's one of the things that the Scrum Master helps out with the teams.
One of the obvious things that I can cite here for that first bullet is this. How many times a team member would say to the Scrum Master, hey, I have this impediment, and I've seen this all too often. Scrum Master's going to go, oh, okay, let me go solve that for you, right? And off they go. That's not an example of the team becoming cross-functional or more importantly, self-managing. They're not
Right.
managing themselves. They're simply saying, help, right? And then you run with it as a Scrum Master, as opposed to feel empowered to solve something that you come across. And if you really can't solve it, then escalate. So my first thing to a team would be, what have you done to try and solve that? If you've tried something, then tell me, because I don't want to keep trying the same thing you've tried.
Yeah.
Right? It's not a slight on you that it hasn't been solved. It's simply just to collaborate with you and say, you've tried A, B, and C. Great. If they didn't work, cool.
Yeah.
I'm not going to try A, B, and C because you've already tried them. That's why. So you're encouraging them to take steps to solve their own issues, right? Become more self-managing.
So when you talk about self-management, right, you're talking about being that as a team where we get to pick what we do, what we work on. So we have all this backlog that's got maybe 100 stuff in it. We get to pick based on priority. We can say, okay, the product owner says, okay, we have out of that 100, we have 25, or we have this 10 that needs to be delivered. Then we can say as a team, okay, I've got a guy who knows .NET, I've got a guy who knows Java and all this kind of stuff. We can decide which ones we can give to you in 2 or 3 days. You come and say, okay, there's this 5 items that we need delivered, but we know that based on capacity, some guy is leaving, going on vacation, and she needs to leave in about 2 days. Okay, because of that, she knows the Java stuff, and we don't have anybody else on the team that is Java, so we can only deliver in this sprint these 4 things because that's the capacity that we have. So being able to decide the amount of work that we do and who does the work is where when we talk about self-management, where the team can say, okay, based on with the capacity we have, the knowledge we have, this is what we can deliver. Because remember, the whole point is to deliver a working product, right? So if we say, hey, based on the capacity and the knowledge base, this is the people that can deliver this work, and this is what we can deliver. You can tell us all day that, hey, I want you guys to deliver this 50 things, but if we don't have the capacity or the people to do it, then it's not going to work. The Scrum Master has to be able to know that this guy knows this guy knows this is the capacity, this is the velocity, all of that information together. He could pull all that stuff together and say, okay, based on this, I'm going to management and telling them this is what we're going to deliver. Like it or not, you can force us all you want. After 2 weeks, that's all we're going to give you.
The devil's advocate here that I would like to talk about per bullet point is, if your organization decides you're not going to have a Scrum Master, like we don't see value in, we think they only are there to run the center for 15 minutes and then they don't really do anything. The leadership in your organization somehow is convinced and they don't want to fund that position. Who does this when you're not funding that position? Who coaches the team members in self-management and cross-functionality? I think that falls to like a development lead or somebody who's real close to the team, who interacts with the team every day, who is somewhat on the team's level, a development lead or a development manager or a tech lead or an architect or somebody like that, who it falls on them to say, hey, you guys figure out how to break the work up between you. Nobody should tell you. The other thing we didn't touch on here about self-management that I think is under self-management is kind of what Om alluded to, is when you have a problem, your team needs to talk amongst themselves and then go reach out into the organization to solve the problem. You have a problem, you don't get to throw your problem over the fence and be like, well, we can't do anything until XYZ department solves it for us. You're not self-managing at that point.
No, you're not. That's right. So sometimes the way that manifests itself is the team member would come to a Scrum Master and go, hey, listen, I just discovered dependency. I need this from this other team before I can continue with what I was supposed to be doing. What that looks like on the other side when the team is self-managing is that team member doesn't come to the Scrum Master. They would have reached out to that other team to try and solve that dependency. And then only if that dependency wasn't solved, they would come back to the Scrum Master and say, we have this issue, here's what I did, I didn't get anywhere, can you help me? Right? That's one example. The other practical example I have is this, and I recommend people try this out. So we always like things that people can actually try out, maybe sometimes at least. For your daily Scrum, the Scrum Master usually facilitates the Scrum. Try not showing up or showing up late one day. See what happens with your team. Are they sitting around waiting for you? Or are they thinking, okay, Scrum Master's late, maybe they have some internet issues or whatever. Let's just self-organize. Let's get on with it.
Well,
somebody picks up the rein.
Let's get to that one.
I
see.
It's for the team.
You're talking
that's
about
why.
self-management. I see.
Yeah, for the team. That's why
I'm sorry.
mentioned it.
I was going to say we're going to touch everything you're talking about. We're going to touch in bullet point number 4, ensuring that all Scrum events take place.
So here's another thing that people tend to forget about the Scrum Master. You talked about the fact that someone can just go ahead and reach out, but here's one skill that people tend to forget: the Scrum Master is a people person, right?
I would hope so.
Well, he's somebody that there's not one of the big skills. At least for me, that's one of the things why I became a Scrum Master is that skill of working with people. A lot of developers don't have that. A lot of developers want to just tell me what to do. I'll go build my stuff and give it to you, and that's it. I don't want to. I don't want to go talk to somebody. I don't want to. I don't want to care about nobody else.
Before random people on the internet disagree, I will disagree because there are some developers who are people who are a people person. People.
Yeah,
I was going to say people. Terrible. But the point of me saying that is, but until you get into become like a senior developer or a team lead or a manager developer, those are not the skills that are emphasized in your role. But even a Scrum Master, entry level, whatever, if there is such a thing, entry level, even the most junior Scrum Master, it is assumed that some level of soft skill, some excellence at dealing with people is involved, and that's why you were hired.
Exactly. That's a number one to me. That's a number one skill as a Scrum Master. You have to be able to relate with people. Yeah. If you don't have that skill, your career is going to be short-lived. You have to have that skill. So that's one of the things where Scrum Master helps the team to do. Yes, there are going to be some developers that know how to relate with people, but let's be honest, a lot of developers want to give me whatever you want to develop and I'll build it. I don't care about all these other people. I don't care about the stakeholders. I don't care about management. I need someone to actually go talk to management for me. I don't need to talk to anybody. I just need to code. I'll give you beautiful code. But when you ask me to go talk to people, that's where you're going to screw up.
That's your job.
Yeah. So that's why a Scrum Master is needed, who can take those impediments, which is another point we're going to get to. But yeah.
Well, let's deal with that one now since we're talking about it. And I know we can skip around. It's our podcast. We do whatever we want.
So that's number 3 then.
Causing the terminology here is very strange to me. I don't know why. Causing the removal of impediments to the Scrum team's progress.
Yep.
Causing removal.
Well, fine. Remove the word causing. Just say removal of impediments.
Well, they deliberately put the word causing in there because what they're trying to say, at least my view of it, is the Scrum Master isn't the sole person who's responsible for removing impediments.
Yep.
They're saying empower the team to do that, right?
That's it.
So one day if you're not there, what happens? You're on PTO, right? What happens? If they have impediments, they're going to sit around and go, my Scrum Master's not here.
No Scrum Master here.
Right? So that's why I think they've done this. This is a change in this Scrum Guide. This wasn't there previously. It wasn't phrased this way.
No.
Tactically, day to day, what does that mean? Causing the, again, you're talking to a person who doesn't understand why they have to pay
the value of a Scrum Master.
Yeah, well, the value of a Scrum Master, but your role is driving the removal of impediments, causing the removal of impediments. Just having you there is causing impediments to be parted out of the way of your team. Yeah. Like, what is that? What's that magical effect? How does that happen?
Okay, number one, because I'm a people person, right? So now the team is like, okay, you have a team that not really comfortable talking to the network guy. So I have network problem, or I don't have access to some database. But I don't want to go talk to the DBA or somebody. So I come to the Scrum meeting and I said, hey, I can't finish this stuff because I need this query. And I don't want to talk to the DBA guy.
Yeah.
I can't get access, but I need someone to give me access. So now the Scrum Master says, fine. I'll be the guy to go set up a meeting with that DBA guy or create a ticket for you to have that access that you need.
Oh boy.
So that's that's part of it.
I bet you. I see you sitting there with like 100 stories, because I can tell you stories of sometimes your team requires an individual to go write a ticket, and then as soon as the ticket goes through in the queue, to show up at someone's desk and sit there next to them and be like, "Hey, I just wrote you a ticket.
That is true.
Did you seriously write me a ticket and then come over and sit at my desk and talk about the ticket you just wrote? Yes, I did.
Yeah.
We need it resolved now. Like, not working in an office.
In a nice way.
Not working in an office has, like, it made me forget a lot about doing that, but I remember doing that a lot.
It's real. Let me just say that.
Actually,
it's real.
yeah.
That happens
I have
all the
actually
time.
done that a lot. Where,
Oh, man. Like,
where you, like, I, at a previous company, I formed those relationships to say where the team can say, oh yeah, we have this stuff. Everybody's like, I don't know what to do. I'm like, don't worry, I got my guy. I know the guy in networking. I know the guy in this thing. I call him up. I'm like, hey, do you want to go for lunch? We go for lunch, and while lunch, hey, I just put in a ticket for your team. Can you go ahead and knock it out? Like, yeah.
Food always works. No, I agree. I think that's a great way to do it.
I think you just thanks for coming to this podcast. And that was it. Like, listen, if you're a Scrum team, a cross-functional team, and you have a go-to person on your team who, when you need something from another department, they know a person in that department. Stop right there. They just paid for their own paycheck right there. Just be like, oh, don't you know someone in marketing? Don't you know someone in sales that we could talk to see how they're selling this feature? Don't you know someone in whatever? This podcast is quickly going to devolve into either Deming or it's going to devolve into Taylor. I don't know which way it's going. It's going more Taylor because it's like, if I can't put pennies and dollars to every second of your work, your utilization, then I don't see a need for you in the organization.
Yeah.
But what you just said is basically the job of executives all day long. The job of executives all day long is to make one-on-one connections with people and use those one-on-one connections with people to influence. It's called influence, to move the needle in the organization. But now suddenly, when you introduce that leader to work for a team of developers, now we don't know what they do.
Right.
Now everyone loses their minds. Insert meme here.
The latency effect is real. So if that person didn't have that, I'll just call it that inside contact, right? What would happen? You could open a ticket and wait, and then it gets closed, and you reopen a new one. And that's typically what happens, sadly. Because people that are working those tickets are incented on closing tickets as fast as possible.
Right.
So all of this is just, all of these are vector forces against the team. And a Scrum Master's job is to reduce those, to minimize those. And so people that are smart, you say you make contacts and you call in, you cash in favors all the time, right? This is real life. This is what people do.
Yep,
That's how you make progress.
Right.
Now, in lieu of that, this is a response to the person who says, "What does a Scrum Master do all day?" So we didn't have one.
Mm-hmm.
Try that, by the way. Try for a sprint not having a Scrum Master. See what happens. So the latency effect is the teams wait for this, in this example, for the impediment to be resolved, and not only is it a knock-on effect, they wait so nothing gets delivered, and then people that are consuming that work wait, right? That's a lot of money. So the Scrum Master's salary, I mean, whatever it is that a Scrum Master is costing you, they pay for themselves in no time. If you don't understand that, then you really need to go sit in a Scrum team and observe a Scrum Master, like shadow them every day.
The other thing I would point out is, if you don't understand that, you should talk to your finance people about the cost of delay in the organization and talk about if I had a person I could deploy to make sure that the cost of delay for every ticket that I write for another department to work on when I'm throwing my tickets over the fence or whatever, if that number came way down to, I don't know, pick a number out of the air, 50% of what it is now, how much money would my organization save? I feel that the thing left out of I've said this many times before, so it shouldn't be shocking. The things left out of the Scrum Guide and whatnot is connecting this to the rest of the business. Rest of the business being HR and finance and executive. So I guess what I'm saying is, causing the removal of impediments. Okay, who does that when there's no Scrum Master? Well, obviously, it would get distributed to the rest of the developers. So whoever ran into the problem will have to go track down the problem and figure out, is that individual developer going to spend time to learn the different hierarchies in the organization and learn their team structures to figure out who the people are, what their schedules are, where they like to go to lunch, who they talk to, when they're available, what days they're in. Well, now that we're all remote, what days they're in the office. If they're this person's in the office on Wednesdays usually because whatever, they have meetings or whatever. Are you going to pay for that, and how much is that worth? Well, how much is a reduction in the time of the tickets worth to you?
Does anybody ever categorize that?
I would not expect if the Scrum Master is deployed and brings finance into the equation and brings other departments into the equation and puts numbers behind them, then it will start painting a very clear picture. If it's just the individual developers doing it, I think of the developers that have been Scrum Masters on my team. They go to resolve an impediment and they'll work on it on the side or whatever, but they'll pick work up, and they would rather be developing than trying to, crawl into other departments and figure out who's who and take people to lunch and stuff like that. So that's not their job. So basically, at my end of year review, when I get incentivized and I'm looking for bonuses, I spent all this time tracking down these bugs and figuring out who was talking for this system and who approved whatever for this system. And all that time, I'm not developing. So all my metrics are going down, down, down.
Yep.
Every minute I step away from my desk. I'm not saying that is the correct incentive plan, but I am saying if you don't have a Scrum Master, this is what your developers are doing. They're wasting their time driving out the organization. So now you have a development lead doing it. Now you have a manager of development doing it, who I would argue are even higher paid than your individual developers and shouldn't be doing it.
I agree, absolutely.
Yeah, definitely. That definitely helped out. Trust me, at that company I worked on, that was like one thing where everybody can say, hey, Ayo's got this guy. It was mostly like a lab guy.
Right.
And everything we did had to go through the lab. So if QA say, hey, they want to test this stuff, and the process is actually you submit a ticket, it takes this long, and this and this and this, I can just cut all that red tape. I can go to my guy, call him up, hey, in the office today, you want to go to lunch? We'll go to lunch. On the way walking back from lunch, I say, hey, I put in this ticket. He's like, send me the ticket number. I send him on Teams. He looks at it. He says, this guy's working on it. He calls that guy. Boom.
Yeah.
All that red tape of 2-3 days of setting up and other stuff is done.
Yeah.
But a lot of times most people don't see that value. Just like you said, people don't see that value. Management, they see the work being done. They don't know what you did to get to that point.
I don't think it's transparent enough just because of the way that the organizations are run.
Yeah, I agree. It's not transparent enough, and it's because we're still organized the traditional way, not exposing these kinds of things.
People got to see the value. That's the thing. It's all about value, and that's why at the beginning of my career, I worked for a credit union company that they decided to say, "Hey, we're gonna work on process. Mm-hmm. We're gonna see what all this different process cost.
Yeah,
like what are the fact that one of the big projects that we did that helped the company out was fraud. A credit union get a fraud. They call in. Some guy picks up the phone. He creates a ticket. It goes through this. It goes through that. We cut that process by, was it like 5,000 hours, where we create a ticket system. The credit union goes online, puts a ticket, puts all the information they need. They ask them all the questions. Yeah. And once that ticket is created, it gets assigned to this team. And then based on the capacity of everybody, so we have 5 people on the team. This guy has 5 tickets. This guy has 10 tickets. This guy has 2. Obviously, you're going to assign it to the guy that has 2. Yeah. He looks at it. Even before that, it cuts back the process of saying, okay, if it's below a certain amount of money, just pay it and be done with it. So if it's below $50, why even bother? Just pay it and be done with it. So that right there is the first step. Once you put in the ticket and it sees that it's below a certain amount, it just pays it off and we're done. So that right there is a couple of hours of somebody getting that email, creating a ticket, looking at it, and pay it off right there. So all that process right there of that one little ticket system that we created, 5,000 hours a month that was cut off from this fraud analyst.
Yeah. 5,000 hours of people's time not being wasted. Even if the organization makes 0 money off of it, it's like, hey, you want to not have to waste 5,000 hours this year? And I don't know, take some vacation that day. Kick out of work early that day. Whatever. Here's 5,000 free hours. Anyway, you went on to bullet point number 2, helping the Scrum team focus on creating high-value increments that meet the definition of done. Ooh. So, like, there's 2 things in there. Number 1, you have to have a definition of done. So I guess I guess that's part of your job now.
That is now.
I guess that's part of your job now. But the other thing is you're helping the Scrum team focus on creating high-value increments. Yeah. High-value increments, which I I would argue includes vertical slicing and a whole bunch of other stuff. This includes everything about writing good stories.
And that's one of the big things that people don't know about Scrum Masters. Yes, you might have a BSA on the team, you have a product owner on the team that are writing stories, but you have to, as a Scrum Master, look and see, is this, whatever the story written, is it valuable?
Yeah.
That whole having value to the team is like, it's one of the points that people don't look at. The fact that, and that's, yes, you have your 15-minute scrum, which probably includes the parking lot of another
Sure, yeah.
10, 15 minutes there.
Yeah, could.
And then, yes, you have your other events, the planning, refinement. Refinement is one thing people don't look at. Refinement is a continuous activity. I'm looking at the backlog most of the time. Okay, do we need this? Don't we need this? Do I need to? Because, yes, we have that one meeting where we talk about it, but before we get there, what do I do to make sure that we're not spending time and time just looking at this stuff? I've already spent hours refining that story, looking at it, chasing people down, making sure this guy is in that meeting, making sure that guy is in that meeting. Those are part of the things that the Scrum Master does that is not looked at.
Yeah.
Yes, I can have a dev lead do that or a tech lead do that, but does he want to do that? The question is, does he want to do that?
If I'm going to pull on my experience here, I don't think the dev lead typically does do that. I think
He can.
when this bullet point isn't happening, there's no one kind of helping pushing the team towards, hey, should we really be doing this low value stuff? Hey, should we really be pulling on in the sprint, knowing that we got blockers, or knowing that this is not the end goal of what we're trying to do, or this has nothing to do with the sprint goal? Why are we just taking it in because someone's crying about it or whatever? Let me go talk to that person. This is weird for a Scrum Master to be talking about this, because under this category, I shuffle a lot of the product discovery efforts under this category. If product discovery is happening, you're never going to pull things into the sprint that have not been properly vetted. You have an experiment proving, you have metrics proving that this item is high value to the business. Proving. Not suspect, or the VP said we need to do this. We have evidence that we need to do this.
That evidence-based approach is absolutely critical, because you have more than one person, giving their opinions, that the VP or whatever. You're going to get different orders from different people, right? And you don't want that necessarily. But coming back to this bullet, though, high-value increments and DoD, those are the two things in that statement, right?
Oh boy.
So as far as the high-value increment, to the team, it's here are all the things we picked up in our sprint backlog, right? It's the Scrum Master who keeps them focused and says, tackle these to the extent possible, dependencies and all of that, considered, in the order of value, right? So they get that. After a while, they'll get good at it. DoD is same way. They may say, well, I'm done with this, right? And it's typical where developers finish developing, over the wall it goes to QA. And it's the Scrum Master's responsibility to say, listen, this is one team. We don't want to be dev complete at the end of the sprint and not done through testing.
Yeah.
So that, I think, is what this bullet is talking about. Is you're essentially shepherding the team in the right direction to deliver something that is truly done, by anchoring to what that means. What's the definition? Sure, they can come up with it jointly. You kind of help that, right? You help facilitate that. If you ask them without facilitation, what's our definition of done? You're going to get different answers, right? And so then you ask, well, how is that adding value at the end of the sprint if it's just dev complete?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Right? So,
and that's one of the big things that I'm working on, because setting up that meeting is like another team I just picked up recently. We need to, that's an artifact, the definition of done.
Yeah.
So we need to sit down with an Agile coach and the entire team and say, okay, we need to write this up, because obviously if it's not written up, then it doesn't count.
That's right.
It has to be written up where everybody can see it.
That's right. So
somebody can call out and say, hey, we said this in the definition of done. This doesn't match that. It doesn't count.
Right.
Or we did not talk about this in definition of done, so that's not what I'm going to do.
Yeah.
So if you have it written down and put somewhere where everybody can see, that's one of the things that the Scrum Master does. I facilitate that meeting. Mm-hmm. It's not even part of the Scrum event, but it's something that has to be done.
Yeah.
So I facilitate that meeting where I say, okay, there are three things that are important. The working agreements, this is how we treat each other on the team, and definition of done. A definition done is something that the business care about. The business doesn't care about all the other stuff. They care about what do you say is, where do you say my stuff that I told you to do is done, and it's a workable product for me to be able to take and go do it.
Maybe. I mean, the devil's advocate on this point is if you don't have a Scrum Master focused on creating high value increments that meet the definition of done, well, I'll rip it in half. If you don't have a Scrum Master defining your definition of done, I mean, the developers most certainly can define the definition of done, right? Now, when you talk about definition of done being a cross-team thing where all your teams have to come online with the definition of done, now we're talking about negotiating between teams. It's getting a little more complicated. I expect, like the development leads I've been at on teams like this, they just step in and say, well, this is what the definition of done is going to be. That's how they'll deal with it. The other side of this, of helping the Scrum teams focus on creating high value increments, they'll say, well, can't product do that? That's what product's for. Product is the one defining if it's valuable. So
that's not wrong. The product is the one defining if it's valuable, but who's delivering what's valuable? It's the team, right? Yeah. And who's making sure that's happening? You're almost like the flagman at that point, right? Just making sure you swing that stop, go, based on what's going on. Yep. To make sure that there's even traffic flow and there's no accidents. That's basically what the Scrum Master is doing at that point. But to your point about the program level DoD and things like that, if it's not properly done, you could get into some real chaos. There's headstrong people, tech leads typically, or architects, that say, hey, listen, my team's done when I say it's done. This is what we're going to do. Yeah. And I've seen that. Right, and so you say, well, you're not alone here, right? So it's no good saying, well, we sync. It's no good saying, well, the hole's at your end. The whole boat's going down.
I mean, the other thing out of this is you have a development lead or whatever who's across 8 teams, somebody who obviously is overburdened, saying like, oh, you have to document your entire architecture before you can do whatever, or you have to give me full, post-mortem documentation and update it on Confluence and write it in a spreadsheet.
That's a CIA
and print
at that point.
Yeah, but I mean, but they're overburdened, so they're injecting into your definition of done things to make their job easier. When the actual problem in the organization is they should get another tech lead and divide the responsibility. So, but without a Scrum Master in the mix, it becomes much harder.
It does. It does. So it's a Scrum Master who will stand up in that example that you cited and say, hey, listen, it's the team that's going to decide the DoD, right? We'll listen to you, and then we'll take what you say and park it over there.
Stormy, hey.
Would you like me to
That's
narrate?
so weird. That's so weird that you're here. Thanks for coming to our...
it's poof, appeared.
The final category for how the Scrum Master serves the team is... Value. Is ensuring all Scrum events take place and are positive, productive, and kept within the time box. Let's start with the particulars in here. Positive, productive. Your role.
Let's start with the one before that.
Oh, okay.
That they take place.
Oh, that they take place.
Because one of the things I've seen very, very often is Scrum Masters would simply poo-poo that. And they'll say, today we can cancel because we don't have enough attendance. I've seen that. Mm-hmm. They do this. Well, we don't have the right people from the stakeholder organization, so we won't do the review today. To me, that's a big red flag. And I asked them to escalate that, because if you don't do the review and you just continue working on the next thing, whatever that is.
You're talking about sprint review?
Sprint review, okay. Doing the demo.
Anything.
You don't
could be anything.
People to show them finished product and get their implicit or explicit approval that they accept that. Mm-hmm. Or if they don't, fine, right? Where have we missed it? Get that feedback and build it in. If you don't get that, you've missed a huge opportunity. So I've seen Scrum Masters say, well, they're too busy. Right? Well, okay, but that doesn't mean you cancel it. You escalate. You escalate above them and say, listen, people are too busy.
The interesting thing about stakeholders being too busy, and again, this is coming from the product side of the table. That's right. This is the product side of the table now.
Yes,
No, we're not talking about product here. We're talking about Scrum Masters.
We've drawn boundaries. If that is a continuing regular problem in your organization, okay, if you're a Scrum Master listening to this and you made it this far, both of you made it this far.
All three. There's 3.
Like a thing that you could do is not wait until the end of the sprint to demo your progress. Like, ask the stakeholders when they have availability, look for it on their schedule, talk to them, ask them when the best time is, and then demo that tiny piece of functionality for them when it's best available, when it's best for them, basically. So if you have to go, like, you start the sprint, you go 3-4 days, and then in whatever state the work is in, you demo to them because they already know they're not going to be available at the end of the sprint. Like I will lobby to do that with teams that find it difficult to implement because their organization is really large. I will suggest this is like, hey, don't start your sprint with 15 work items or whatever. Start with one item that is for one person, and then at the end of a couple days, set up your demo with that one person for that one work item. So like one work item, one user, one demo. Work on that, and then that's out of the way, and you can continue the sprint for your whoever else is in.
I fully agree with that. The other thing I would say, I tend to extend that chain a little bit and say, once you've got that demo done, typically it's the second week of the sprint just because of the nature of things, but it doesn't matter. Once you've got that in and you've had that stakeholder look at it and give you the thumbs up, ship it out to production. Don't wait on it till the end of the sprint. Make a release out of it. No, that's just a stage gate again, right?
Yeah, sorry, I didn't realize people didn't release as soon as they were done with work items.
They don't.
I don't live in that.
People don't.
I don't live in that world. What do your developers do all day if they don't release as soon as they're done with things?
That's a different podcast. What did
Develop something else.
What we're talking about falls under the fourth bullet point of Scrum Master serves as a Scrum team category in ensuring the Scrum events take place and are positive. Positive. Okay, this is where I'm going to bring us back to our topic. Positive, meaning, hey, we're at our daily stand-up. The development team probably talked about, we have this SQL migration thing because the marketing team's cutting over to whatever, or this team's cutting over to whatever, customers cutting over to whatever. We have to do some operational stuff with our development team because maybe we're under the you build it, you own it type of, company kind of thing. I've been in a bunch of teams like that. Your development team builds it, your development team owns it. You got to do the daily operation stuff. Scrum Master.
Yep.
Keep things positive for us, okay? We all know we have to do some kind of script. It's going to take the majority of what we plan in our sprint out and replace it with this new thing being asked for by the business. We're going to assume in this example that the product owner has done their discovery work, the pertinent discovery work to say, yes, this is what we need to do, right? Like if we... I've been through a bunch of SQL migrations, so excuse me for truncating this. If we migrate the traffic out of this old database, we migrate all the records out of this old database, punch them into the new database, sync the keys properly or whatever, and we can take this old database offline, then we don't need this other team to maintain this database. We don't need to pay this service. We don't need to pay for the bandwidth for shipping records back and forth or whatever. This is all the money we can save if we do this now as a top priority. And honestly, you, the product owner, probably are the one lobbying to get this done, right? And your lobbying efforts, again, the team moves forward on a certain cadence. But the product, where all the product managers and the director of product, the VP of products, whatever your product structure looks like, may not move forward on the same cadence as your team.
And that's not a requirement that they do, right?
Yeah, right. No, it's not a requirement. It's like I was saying, if we are moving forward with the mentality of we're agile, the Scrum Master can help here by highlighting in a positive manner that we finally got the green light, we finally got the thumbs up, we finally got the go-ahead to take the system offline and save the business money, to make a real financial impact. Now it's a Scrum Master's job to paint that in the most positive light possible to get everyone behind it. I used to be a pain for things that organizationally they would bring down and say, okay, we're going to do this now. And I'd be like, why? What's the reason behind we're doing this? They're like, oh, why are you asking that? You're just being difficult. Why does there got to be a reason? Just do what I say. And I'm like, no, that's not good enough. Yeah. You need to tell me why. I need to understand that you have taken into consideration the customers, the employees, the future of the product, all these things. There's someone to say, there's someone to paint it in a positive manner to help us paint it in a positive manner, connect us to the goal, and move along in a productive manner.
Yep.
I love the way you said that, and I think from a Scrum Master,
good.
Seriously, no, from a Scrum Master perspective, I can't imagine the difficult role that you play because there's real conflict in you kind of walking that line and being able to. It almost seems contradictory, and I imagine that it's a very difficult role to be able, in particular, to paint a positive picture when you're potentially, at this point, you have to do this because the business said you have to do this. But let me tell you why it's a positive thing, and so try to sell that.
Yeah.
Usually, separating those people out makes it a lot more palatable. And what I would say to that point specifically is that, transparency is one of our pillars. So being completely and utterly transparent in why we are doing things is absolutely necessary. Developers are not dumb, and they do want to do the right thing and to move this product and this company forward, and they want to be able to realize the positive impact that their work is doing. It jives them. I mean, I see them go like, dang, we did that, right? And so spinning things to your point in a positive way to get them on board, so they're like, this makes sense to me. I get it. I can get on board with that.
Yeah.
So we're talking about ensuring that all the
Events take place,
which
and are positive and productive.
Yeah, positive, productive. So let me just summarize, and I guess you guys can decide if we're moving on or we're staying there.
Oh,
so
like I was gonna say, you should summarize, because if we're gonna nitpick at anything in here, I'm gonna nitpick at the time box thing, because as a product owner, I could care less about time. Like if my meeting is productive and we're getting feedback and like the juices are flowing, I do not care about time boxes.
And that's one of the one of the places where a Scrum Master has been looked at as a bad guy, because it's like, okay,
you're right about that.
We scheduled this meeting for 1 hour, and we're getting to a point where we know, okay, it's 11:55, and people are still talking. And that's exactly the same thing with me. Let's go back to the stand-up.
Yeah.
Technically, we don't have stand-ups anymore because everybody's in their home. But where the stand-up is supposed to be 15 minutes, and people are talking, and I'm seeing the value there, this exchange of information. But the thing is, it's supposed to be 15 minutes, right? And I'm like, okay,
I see where you're
it's
going
supposed to be
with this,
15 minutes, but we're talking some good stuff.
Yeah.
Like people are saying, okay, I have this problem. This guy he has all the solutions, but it's like 13 minutes in, and I know we have
2 minutes left.
we have 5 more stories to talk about.
Yeah.
We have 2 people in the team that haven't spoken. Do we keep going?
I've been in those sessions before. You make your breakthrough, and especially when you're working on legacy systems with developers who didn't create the systems. Oh, yesterday I figured out this is how this actually works. Let's readjust the stories we're working on based on my new knowledge. That's the point of the stand-up, man.
Exactly.
No, actually, stuff like that.
But hang on, status
stuff
is
like
what
that
he
you
said.
can move to the parking lot.
Yes.
Stuff like you move to the parking lot. But the one that I'm talking about is where, okay, we're talking about access to stuff, right?
Yeah.
Okay, I can't get access to this stuff. And there's this one guy that has that information. He's like, oh yeah, you got to do this, this, and this, and this, and this, and this. He's providing valuable information, which is good for the team, but it's 11:14.
So on the daily stand-up as an event, should it be 15 minutes religiously, just 50? Heck no.
Okay, maybe
There
not,
are
but-
times when there's value, let it go, right? Let it go for 20. I'm a fan of the 16th minute concept.
Do we have a walk the board? I don't know if we have
We
a
don't
walk the board
anymore.
podcast. I
Well,
don't remember.
we've never done one of those. We should probably consider it.
This would be a good time to cut to, like, if we ever did I guess I'll have to research if we ever did a walk the board
We haven't
podcast.
done
So
it. We haven't done it.
specifically,
Right.
if you're walking the board and when you're walking through the work and say, hey, let's look at the work that's closest to being done, right? And say, what does it take to move this work forward to be done? Done, right? Done. Definition of done. Again, I think we've talked about this in a previous podcast, and if we did, I'll link it. I'll go.
Sure.
I hate dealing with YouTube's
know.
linking, but like, I'll link it. Woo! If we didn't, I'm cutting all this out.
Move on to the
Listen,
next
we're-
point.
listen,
The product owner stuff. Since we have the product folks in the room,
Listen,
let's
you-
talk about how we help them.
You don't need to tell me to move on because I've already moved on.
There you
Like
go.